Welcome. Thanks for coming to practice with me this morning. So, change of plans. I sent out the invitation. I had one practice intention in mind, and during the week that kind of evolved. And a couple reasons for that. One is that I picked up some additional training. Uh, I've been so fortunate that the professional association that I am accredited through as a yoga teacher has been providing some just outstanding um, webinar educational opportunities. So was able to get some additional knowledge from that, and I had an email from a couple of our group participants that was very insightful. And so in responding to them, made me think that the practice I had originally planned would just set that in the parking lot for now, and we'll do something a little bit different. And not sure if I want to go into a lot of detail about what that difference is. Maybe sometimes it's better just to do the practice and see how that theme evolves during the practice. I would just say this, that here in Wisconsin, a few days ago I mowed the lawn. Yesterday went out for a bike ride, and this morning it's snowing. So obviously, if I would go out for a walk today, I'm not going to dress the same as I did when I was mowing the lawn or riding my bike. Of course, we adapt to meet the changes as they occur. So then the overriding instruction today is trying to meet the practice where you are today. Just like you would meet the weather where it is. So just one other thing, we're going to start with a truly ancient practice. It's called Dasha Shalana. In some schools, also known as the 8 churnings. It's a warm-up practice, but it will be helpful to have your shoes off to start that. So we're going to start on our feet. And if possible, taking your shoes off. I'm just going to come up onto my feet and be in the view here where you can see my feet. And what we're going to do is shifting your weight into your right foot, just taking your left foot behind you and coming onto the top of your toes. And then circling that ankle around, so that your foot rolls from top of the toes to bottom of the toes. Going in both directions. Another way to think about that is it's almost like your heel is drawing a circle on the ceiling. So we're warming up not just toes, ankles, but knees and hip as well. After you've gone a few times in each direction, then we'll just go to the other side. So starting kind of slow. So it would be starting on the toenail side of your foot, top of your foot, and then rolling, rotating so that you come to the bottom, going in both directions, just a few times. Now I know that it's not unusual. Once in a while you get sore feet, maybe even plantar fasciitis, and you like to have your shoes on. So if that describes you, then this would be a good time to maybe put those shoes back on. We're going to be standing for a while, and there will be no need to have bare feet, at least for a few more minutes here. So coming to standing position, continuing that Dasha Shalana, with just a shoulder shrug, shoulders lifting up towards your ears. Noticing how when shoulders come up, do they kind of want to come forward? And that's sort of a natural thing to happen. Let's roll our shoulders, rolling them back. And then just, once they're down, drawing them back up towards your ears, seeing if they stay more in that neutral position this time when they come up and down. Now, still working with upper body a bit. Next part of the 8 churnings is just to tip your head to one side, right ear towards right shoulder, coming center, and then left ear towards left shoulder. Go on each side one more time. And then pausing in the center, taking your chin towards your chest. And this time we'll roll our head off to the left, off to the right, and then back to center, rolling up to the left. Just one more in each direction. And then bringing your hands in front of you, interlacing your fingers, and then bringing elbows up to about shoulder height. And now we're gonna, as if there were a pencil right in the clasp of your hands here, like you were gonna draw an infinity symbol, sideways figure 8 on the ceiling. So rotating your wrists rotating. Maybe I'll come a little bit closer so you can see that. Wrists rotating, so and elbows stand fairly high. They don't have to be all the way up to shoulder height. So if you've been going in one direction with that infinity symbol, pause in the center, go the other way. Yeah, so now it becomes a bit of a mind exploration as well. And then letting that drop off. I'm assuming you're still standing. You didn't try to come to your hands when I did. Taking a little bit of a wider stride, just a bit more than shoulder width apart. And toes pointed out just slightly, just off from being straight ahead. And then on an inhale, sweeping arms up. And on an exhale, bending at knees, hips, and ankles, coming on down. Not bending very far. Up and down a couple times. Warming up joints, bringing synovial fluid in there. Get movements a little bit smoother. And if knees are okay with bending this far, bending a little bit deeper. Last 2. And last 1. Yeah, keeping those knees happy at this point. Coming all the way up. And now it's a bit of a twist, taking your arms out to the side. And then I'm going to swing my arms such as that the right arm comes in front of me, left arm comes behind. And I'm going to kind of twist in that direction that the front arm is leading me. Kind of rotating my torso and my gaze in that front arm direction. Little bit of rotation for your spine, starting to get those joints a bit more mobile. And last one, Some of you will remember this well. The 60s. We had a really cool device way back then, toy plaything, and I sure had one. I know my sister had one, and she was a lot better at this than I was. It's the hula hoop. Yeah. So bending your knees slightly and hula hooping your hips around. Yeah, remember these days? Go in the other direction. We'll just go either direction a couple times. Back the same way, first time. And then finishing up, a couple more hoops this way. Letting that movement trail off. And coming to a standing position. And again, not feet close together, feet not necessarily even hip width apart, a little bit wider than hip width apart, toes slightly pointed out, and then bending over, bringing hands to knees. This particular movement is called Sarpa. It's supposed to emulate a serpent. So taking the front of your pelvis and drawing it down towards the floor, lifting torso, neck, and head, and then coming all the way up. And then tipping from your hips, lower back rounding first, bringing you back down to bending hands and knees. So it's inhale, hips tipping, brings you up. Exhale, lower back rounding, brings you down, such that hips move first, head moves last. Seeing if you can make this a smooth, fluid movement, best you can. Last one, this time when we come up, pausing there. So noticing feet are still a little bit wide and a little bit pointed out. We're going to keep that same foot position as we head for some sun salutations, creating a little bit more space for your body to move freely. On an inhale, sweeping up, exhale, fold, and pausing here in the exhale. Noticing what this feels like in terms of ease of movement, meeting this fold perhaps a little bit more in line with where your body is today. On an exhale, lifting torso, neck, and head. Let's inhale all the way upside down. And exhale, sweeping up. And let's go back to the way we traditionally would do that. What the instructions normally are is that, gosh, those feet have got to be no more than hip width apart and they got to be pointing straight ahead. Let's do a fold that way. Inhale, sweeping up. Exhale, folding. And seeing if this position right here is kind of more effortful than the one that we did just a moment ago. If that's the case for you, then go ahead and step your feet a little bit wider apart. Turn your toes just slightly out. And perhaps feel a little bit more ease in this particular movement. On an inhale, lifting torso, neck, and head. Exhale, coming all the way back down. Let's inhale to hands and knees. And downward facing dog. Hands are under shoulders, knees are under hips. Let's approach this particular dog pose in a way that maybe meets your physical being where it is today. Just an experiment. Taking those hands forward a bit and a little bit wider, almost outside of your shoulder width, and then turning your hand so that it points out just a bit. Remember that foot position we had earlier? Feet a little bit wider, a little bit pointed out. Taking your feet a little bit wider here for dog pose and bringing hips up and back, up and back. Yeah, feet can be wide in dog pose. If that gives you a little bit more access, helps you meet the practice where you are today. Let's inhale back to hands and knees. Stepping forward, forward, hold. Feet wide if you need them. Inhale, sweep it all the way up. Arms to the side, exhale. Let's take that wide stride we normally do, and this time with toes pointed out a fair amount, maybe 20 degrees or so, and hands on hips. On an exhale, bending at knees, hips, and ankles, taking your seat behind you. Inhale, coming back up. Up and down a few times to release pelvic floor muscles. Letting go of any even unconscious tension that may be there. And bending your knees only as far as it is comfortable right now. Next time you're in that bend knee position, bringing hands to heart, we'll do a couple things to tone those pelvic floor muscles, and that would be lifting the heel of your right foot, but slow, steady, smooth to the count of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Keeping that right heel lifted. Now lifting the left heel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now setting both heels down, slow, smooth, steady. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Houston, we have contact. Inhale, coming on. Stepping your feet together. Headed for chair pose. And in the interest of introducing a little bit more ease in this particular movement, if you found that that wider stance, toes out a little bit, was more easeful for you today in forward fold, let's try it in chair pose. In fact, let's all try it. Taking feet a little bit wider, toes pointed out just slightly, and then hands at heart, and again bending at knees, hips, and ankles, coming into chair pose. Exhale, coming down. Inhale, arms straight forward. Exhale, arms up. Inhale, coming all the way up. Arms to the side. So it's exhale, bending. Inhale, arms straight forward. Exhale, lifting and coming all the way up. And we'll add the twist to this particular movement. So on an exhale, it's bending knees, hips, and ankles. And then bringing left hand to right knee, right hand comes behind. And rotating, turning to the right. Couple breaths here. On an exhale, coming forward. Inhale, coming all the way up. And we'll go to the other side. But just in the interest of experimentation, let's try it the other way, the traditional way, the way that most of the time it gets instructed. That would be feet together, toes pointing straight forward, and see if there's any difference in the quality of the movement, the pose. Exhale, bending at knees, hips, and ankles. Right hand to left knee, left hand comes behind. Rotating, turning to the left. So maybe this is just as easeful for you. But at least for today, we're going to do whatever it takes for you to meet the practice where you are now. Exhale, come forward. Inhale, coming all the way up. Arms to the side. Maybe some of you are aware of, have read or heard of a man named Ram Dass. Back in the early 80s, he wrote a book that was really the beginning of mindful movement. Title of his book, Be Here Now. That's kind of the theme of today's practice. Just trying to meet the practice where you are now, just like you would meet the weather in the conditions it is now. Let's see here, just have to check my notes to make sure we're headed in the right direction. Oh, yeah. Let's take a wide stride one more time. Hands on hips, turning right toes in, turning left toes out. And pausing for just a moment to notice where your hips are pointing. So if I wanted to have my hips right now, if I was standing on a clock dial, if I had my hips pointing right straight at 3 o'clock, they'd be toward to the side. If I had them pointing at 12 o'clock, they'd be over this way. Let's split the difference. Hips right about in the middle, splitting the difference between 3 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Now, keeping those hip joints happy and healthy, and then noticing how the weight is more or less even, front foot to back foot. And on an exhale, bending your front knee, but only bending it to the degree that weight stays more or less even, front foot to back foot. Perhaps you have to go beyond that point to find out, oh yeah, now I'm way in the front. Coming back up, finding that place where front knee is bent, yes. Weight is still more or less equal, yes. For me today, that's right about there. And if you still feel like the weight is pouring more into that front foot, then check the alignment of your torso. Torso may be tilting unconsciously a little bit forward. Just bringing it back up. Rather than adding some muscular effort, just shifting alignment a bit to bring equal weight front to back. Hands to heart. How about elbows lifting, arms reaching, turning to look out over that left hand. Couple breaths here. Next, inhale, straightening that front knee to come up. And we'll go to the other side. Left toes turn in, right toes turn out. And same thing on this side. Kind of splitting the difference, this time between 9 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Not 12 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. Splitting the difference to keep hip joints happy and healthy. Noticing how the weight is more or less equal, bending your front knee such that weight stays more or less equal. And it's an experiment, it's an exploration. You might have to go way into that bend to say, oops, going a little bit too far. Coming back. For me, finding it right about there. Checking the alignment of your torso, bringing hands to heart, elbows up, reaching up, looking out over that right hand. If you were able to find that balance, front foot to back foot, just appreciating the stability there. Next, inhale, riding that inhale up, bringing hands down, stepping your feet together. Let's do a sun salutation just by way of changing things up a bit. So it would be inhale, sweep up, and exhale, fold. Yeah. So if you've automatically gone to feet hip width apart, toes pointed straight forward, this would be an opportunity to explore what ease may be accessible if you take those feet just a little bit wider apart, toes pointed just a little bit more out. Perhaps allows you to meet the practice with a bit more ease on an inhale, lifting torso, neck, and head. Exhale all the way upside down. And just come right back up. Inhale all the way up. Arms to the side. Exhale. Taking that wide stride one more time. A few more standing poses here. Right toes turn in, left toes turn out. Remember all those things we did before, splitting the difference, finding the weight in the front and the back foot. Same thing here. And then bending that front knee, keeping the weight more or less equal. Can that weight stay equal, more or less, even as you tip your hips and bring left hand to left shin? And now allowing this hip, upper hip, right hip, to rotate even a little bit more towards the floor, coming around just a bit, keeping that particular hip joint in its happy range. Let's take that free arm, upper arm up towards the ceiling, and then beginning to straighten that front knee, but just to the point where you start to bump into the stretch, hamstring of that front leg, feeling a little bit of a pull, just shaking hands with the stretch, not blasting through. Turning your gaze to look at the floor. And then first transition to come out is bringing that upper hand down, looking back, forward, bending your front knee, and coming on up. Going to the other side. Left toes turning, right toes turn out. Splitting the difference. Finding the balance. Bending the front knee. On an exhale, tipping at your hips, right hand to right shin. And letting this upper hip, left hip, rotate towards the floor just an inch or so while you take your free hand, left hand up towards the ceiling. And then beginning to straighten that front leg, but finding the interface where the stretch begins to activate. For me, it's right about there. And then looking at the floor in front of that front foot, right foot. Just a couple of breaths here. First transition is bringing that upper arm down to your hip, looking forward, bending the front knee to come on, stepping your feet together. Let's see here. Hands to hips, and we'll pour our weight into the right leg, and then stepping that left foot behind you, and looking back, checking to see that those back toes, left toes are more or less pointed straight forward. Yeah. So for almost everybody, they don't land that way. So here's what we can do. We can take a little bit wider stride, feet a little bit wider apart so that it's a bit easier for toes to begin to point straighter forward. And then from that back foot, lifting the back heel allows the front knee to bend. Descending the back heel brings the front leg straight. So you stay where you are. I'm just going to turn sideways so you can see that action a little bit better. Yeah, my feet are a little bit wider than normal so that my toes point more or less straight forward. So it's lifting that back heel allows the front knee to bend. Descending the back heel brings the front leg straight. Next time you're in that bent knee position, pause there. And then finding your hip crests, lifting those hip crests up towards the ceiling, just a 1/4 inch or so, not all that much. And then out of that lifted pelvis, drawing the heel of your back foot down to the floor. Inhale, arms straight forward. Exhale, arms up overhead. Arms up, chest up, chin up. First transition is bringing hands back to heart. Now we will align our torso with that back leg. Pouring your weight into the front foot. Slow, smooth, steady, lifting that back leg to come forward. We'll go to the other side. So pouring your weight into the left foot, stepping back with the right, not all that far, so that both feet can be comfortably on the floor. Checking to see that that back leg, those toes are more or less straight forward. Taking the one foot a little bit wider if you need to in order to get that. Reason for doing that is it will more directly access hip flexor muscles, in particular, deep hip flexor muscle, psoas muscle. So now lifting the heel of the back leg brings the front knee forward, descending the back heel brings the front leg straight. And if you're finding again that weight lands more forward, more in the direction of the bent knee, just adjusting the alignment of your torso first before trying to add a layer of effort to make things balance out. Let's hold this next bent knee position. Back heel is at least light on the floor, if not just off the floor. Lifting your front of your pelvis up towards the ceiling, descending that back heel out of the lifted pelvis. Inhale, arms straight forward. Exhale, arms up, chest up, chin up. Couple breaths here. And exhale, hands to heart. Now we are going to align torso with the angle of that back leg. Pouring your weight into the front foot. Pouring, 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 pouring. Like you were pouring a soda out of a can. Yeah, you pour too fast. All you get is foam, right? Yeah, we'll work on that. We do almost every week, don't we? Let's see here. Oh, yes. I may have neglected to do so earlier, but a strap will come in handy. And later on in the practice, when we go to the floor, either a furniture cushion a yoga block or a blanket will come in handy. So reason for the strap is normally we reach behind us and we grab opposite wrists. Reason for the strap today is that to maybe make it a little bit more accessible, having something back there to give you a little bit more space between your hands. So space between your hands. And if you're nothing handy and you're fine with grabbing wrists, go ahead and grab a wrist with one hand behind you. And then letting elbows draw away from each other. So we're not trying to lift hands, arms back up behind us. We're just trying to draw those elbows away from each other, such that collarbones, shoulder blades move in the same direction, simultaneously wide across the front and the back of your shoulders. And then stepping back with your left foot stepping back, and once again, finding a comfortable width in your stance so that back toes are more or less straight forward. And then bending that front knee. Normally here the instruction is to fold forward right over that bent front knee. Just for today, like we did in the standing poses, going to split the difference. So bending in a way such that torso comes down kind of between where your feet are. Folding forward, folding forward. Front knee is still bent. And now it begins to straighten, just like in the triangle pose. Finding that insertion point where hamstring and the front leg, right leg begins to feel the stretch. Pausing there. Yep. Not forgetting about those elbows moving away from each other. And just a couple breaths here. First transition is bending that front knee, right knee, and then coming back up and just stepping forward, standing with arms at your side, and just checking in left side, right side, having done one thing on one side, not on the other. Might be pretty obvious. There's a bit of a difference. Rather than focusing in on the side where the leg was forward, hamstring was stretching, focusing on the other side. What's that other side feel like? Side that was just kind of out of the picture for a while. Back leg side. Yeah, so not only giving body the space to meet the practice where it is, seeing what may arise, but giving time to recognize what may the effects be. Let's go to the other side. So again, either grabbing wrists, if you grabbed the wrist last time, grabbing the opposite one this time. If not, having something back there, could even be a washcloth. That would be long enough, wouldn't it? Shifting your weight into the left foot, right foot stepping back. Elbows moving away from each other. Bending that front knee. Now folding forward, but splitting the difference. And if this feels a little bit unstable, a little bit unsteady, it's okay to take a bit of a wider stride with that back leg. And now beginning to straighten the front knee, but again, finding the tipping point, the engagement point. For me, it's right about there. Leg isn't all the way straight. Just touching the stretch. Bringing elasticity rather than blasting through. Elbows moving away from each other. Wide across the collarbones, wide across the shoulder blades. First transition is bending the front knee again, coming back up, stepping your feet together, and letting go of the strap, the washcloth. And just enjoying that ease and upright feeling, whatever that experience is for you right now. Let's head further forward by way of a sun salutation. So once again, kind of an experimenting day. So let's all take a little bit wider stride with our feet and toes just pointed slightly out in order to access the folds, see if there's a bit more ease in that particular movement. Inhale, sweeping up. Exhale, fold. Bit of a lift, inhale. All the way upside down, exhale. Inhale, hands and knees. Remember, dog, we gave ourselves permission to have hands a little bit wider. And hands rotated out just a bit. Then curling toes under with feet wide, bringing hips up and back, 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 back. Yeah. You know, there are some schools of yoga that advocate, boy, those feet, they have to be right tight together, ankles touching each other. Well, that's fine for about 5% of the people in the world. The rest of us, in order to meet the practice where we are, we have to move those ankles away from each other. Some folks more than others, doing whatever it takes. Let's come to hands and knees. And then bringing your hands forward just a bit. Then bringing your hips into line with knees and shoulders. Lowering yourself all the way down. So here we are in prone position, that prone mountain position, headed for locust pose. But starting a little bit differently, not surprising today, is it? Would be taking your feet wide. If you're on your yoga mat, as wide as your mat. If you're not on a mat, you're just on the ground like me, it would be shoulder width apart or more, certainly more than hip width apart. And now rotating your legs, your thighs, such that toes point away from each other, heels point towards each other. And begin to draw your heels towards each other until you feel gluteus muscles, hamstring muscles engage. Maybe heels come just a few inches towards each other. Maybe they come almost together. Wherever that inflection point is for you. Now letting those activated hamstring and glute muscles be the lever that lifts your torso, neck, and head just a bit. And exhale, coming on back down. Head and neck, torso back down. So still engaging hamstrings and glutes. We'll lift one more time using those muscles to create the lift as much as possible. And then if you'd like a little bit more challenge, that would be unweighting those back legs, straight legs. Not necessarily picking them up off the floor, just unweighting them. Little bit more engagement, hamstrings and glutes. Next in the progression, if you'd like a bit more challenge, would be lifting those hands off the floor, reaching them back towards your feet. Locust pose. Yeah. Just a breath or two here. Letting hamstring and gluteus muscles do more of the lifting, lower back muscles just coming along for the ride. And bringing hands back, releasing all of that effort, pushing up to hands and knees, keeping your knees wide, bringing your seat back. Yeah, wide knees, child's pose. A little bit more of a flexion in your lower back, a little bit more release with knees wider. And then coming to hands and knees. Coming on to your back with knees bent and soles of the feet on the floor. Headed for bridge pose. Guess what? Bridge pose in a little bit different way. So normally we say, gosh, those knees have got to be parallel, feet have got to be pointing straight away. In fact, sometimes instructors will even ask you to put a block between your knees to be sure that they stay there. Let's try that. Knees and toes pointing straight away on bridge pose, but the first transition is to tip your hips such that lower back comes in contact with the floor, and then it's lifting hips up towards the ceiling. Noticing internally what the freedom of movement may be here. And on an exhale, coming on down. Let's try something. Let's explore something. Taking your feet a little bit wider. Letting your toes point out away from each other just a bit. Tipping your hips, lower back contacts the floor. Lifting your spine, hips up towards the ceiling. What do you think? Maybe in your body, this meets the practice with more ease. Exhale, coming on down. Rolling to one side and coming seated. So I said a few minutes ago, furniture cushion or yoga block might come in handy. This would be the time to use that right now if you think you need it. And that's going to be in a seated pose. So legs straight out in front of you. Guess what? We're going to experiment again. Legs a little bit wide, just a bit. And then hands behind you so that you can kind of roll forward on your sit bones, sit up a little straighter. And now folding at your hips, folding until you kind of get stuck. And then it's okay to round your back, rounding forward. Couple breaths here. Inhale, coming back up. And then it's Bandha Konasana. Wide-legged, feet together, forward fold. So same thing here. Coming forward on your sit bones just a bit. Folding forward until there's not much left in that hinge. And then it's okay to round your way down. And on inhale, coming back up. So now one leg does Paschimottanasana, the straight out leg kind, the other leg does Bandha Konasana. Lift the soles together, forward fold. So traditionally, the instruction has always been, you got to fold right over that straight out forward leg. Let's experiment. Let's try it that way, and then we'll try splitting the difference. Rolling forward on your sit bones, folding, hinging, rounding, coming over that straight out leg. And then on an inhale, coming back up. And now one more fold. Let's split the difference. See if that allows you to meet the practice just like you'd meet the weather. Hinging first and then folding. Yeah, still getting a pretty good stretch in that straight out leg. But not quite as effortful, a little bit more easeful. Coming back on. Huh? Let's go to the other side. So I'll leave it up to you, whether you want to fold straight over the outstretched leg or if you want to split the difference. For me today, I'm going just off center, just off to the inside of that straight out leg. Holding forward. Inhale, coming back up. And let's remove the block. Headed for a couple of seated twists. But a little bit different leg position for these particular seated twists. Bringing your hands behind you, just back of your hips. And then tipping with legs wide, tipping both your knees to the right and letting your hips, your torso follow that turning. And you can even sweep that free hand, left hand around, coming into a bent leg twist. Couple breaths here. Bit more easeful twist. Same benefits. Let's exhale, coming on out and going to the other side. So legs are wide, hands are back, tipping your knees. And then sweeping that free arm, right arm around, twisting. Couple breaths. And on an exhale, coming on back forward. So one more seated twist in each direction. And again, a little bit different leg position. Just to experiment, just to see a bit of a different method of practice that would help maybe you meet the practice where you are today. So how about this? One leg stays bent, right leg stays bent, left foot comes underneath. And that foot can be pretty close up to the heel of the bent knee leg. And then grabbing right knee with left hand. Right hand comes behind, rotating to the right, turning into that bent knee. So adding just one more nuance. That bent knee that's underneath, leg that's underneath. Taking that knee out of the hip socket, drawing it away as if knee is going to shoot out of the hip socket. See what, if any, change that arises in the twist. Exhale, coming on forward. And we'll go to the other side. So now it's left knee stays bent, right leg comes underneath. Right hand grabs left knee, left hand comes behind. Rotating into the twist. And experimenting again on this side, this time with the right knee. Underneath leg, underneath knee, drawing that knee out of the hip socket to see what, if any, change arises in the twist. And letting that effort go, coming back on forward. And guess what? We're almost done. Just a few minutes left for final resting pose. So coming onto your back, either with knees bent, soles of the feet on the floor, or with legs straight out. If you are using legs straight out and you have something handy to put under your head, I would encourage you to do that. A little bit of support under your neck, especially if legs are straight out, but maybe even if knees are bent. A little bit more release for lower back. We'll start by drawing your awareness to your scalp. Yep, up there. Crazy as it sounds, a lot of us hold tension in our scalp, almost as if scalp was trying to grip the skull. Letting scalp release. Now letting forehead release from hairline to eyebrows. Like leaving the butter out at the counter, things begin to soften. Perhaps you've already noticed how releasing your scalp, your forehead, can release tension in your neck, shoulders, and arms. Letting your jaw relax. Nothing special to do with your breathing. Just letting the exhale be effortless, inhale spontaneous. Less doing, meeting things as they are. Just a few more breaths here. If eyes are closed, opening your eyes. If legs are straight out, bending your knees. And then rolling to one side, coming seated. We'll just wait a moment for everyone to come seated. And then taking a collective inhale, arms up. Exhale, hands to heart. Namaste. Thank you for practicing with me.